use it to fill in and later update with data loader. If that's the case, I usually go ahead and export it as a CSV, since that's the format I know that I'll use later. Then we can choose to subscribe to a report. So you can actually subscribe to up to 5 reports. You can choose when you want to receive it. Do I want to get it daily, weekly, monthly? When do I want to get it? What days of the week? And what is my preferred start time? And I say preferred start time because it actually runs within 30 minutes of this time, depending on other job queue activity. So if I set it to 1 o'clock, I'll actually get the results between 1 and 1:29. So if I need it at 1 o'clock, I need to schedule it an hour earlier, schedule it for noon. You can also choose to get an attachment in this subscription. And I know this was an idea on the Idea Exchange with a lot of points. People really wanted this because you can export, you can schedule, which sends a nice formatted email version of the report. But now this is basically like scheduling to have the exported version sent to you with the attachment. Then you can set recipients. And again, this is dependent on the appropriate profile permissions. You can choose who it gets sent to. But who it gets sent to, if I'm adding VP of Global Sales and Sales Ops, this person needs access to the report folder where this report is housed in order for me to send it to them. So if I want to send it to someone who doesn't have access to the folder, I first need to add them to the folder, or it won't allow me to add them as a recipient. Same thing with the running user. Running user can be me or someone else who also has access to the folder. Sorry, I did not mean to scroll there. Who also has access to the folder. So let's talk about running user for just a minute. We'll see it again when we get to our dashboard portion. But the running user is saying from whose perspective are we viewing this data in the emailed version of the report. So normally, if I run a report, I see the data that I would otherwise have access to see. Normally, if you run a report, you see the data that you would otherwise have access to see. But what about in the emailed version? How do we know whose perspective to send this data? Because you just get this emailed formatted version. It's not dynamic in the email. It's dynamic within Salesforce. So the running user says, okay, whose level of data are we going to let them see in this emailed version of the report? So if I set to run the report as myself, in the emailed version, this person may have access to more data than they would otherwise see in Salesforce. But if they click the link in the emailed version of the report to go back into Salesforce, their regular security takes back over. Their regular security applies. So for reports, we set the running user in the context of our report subscription. This concept will come up again when we talk about running users for a dashboard. And speaking of dashboards, this is our last big topic, and then we will get to our wrap-up lesson. So should have y'all out of here on time, maybe a few minutes early, even with our little hiccup partway through today. When I think of dashboards in Salesforce, I always think of my dashboard in my car. My car dashboard shows me things like my fuel, my temperature, my speed. And this information is available to me at a glance. Obviously, I shouldn't be doing anything more than just glancing at something if I'm driving. And it all comes from various places in my car. So my speed comes from how fast my wheels are moving. My fuel from my gas tank. I don't know where everything comes from. I'm not a big car person, but I do know it comes from different places. Dashboards in Salesforce work in a very similar way, in that they can visually display data from various reports all on one page. Alternatively, or maybe in conjunction with that, I can take one report and have it feed multiple components and display the data in different ways on the same dashboard. Now, we'll see a slide on this in a couple of slides, but with a dashboard, you always set a running user. But the concept is the same as what we just talked about. Again, it's saying, from whose perspective are we viewing this data? The running user only controls access to data from the actual dashboard. So kind of like with the report, if I were to click this link to view the report and drill into the report, once they're looking at the report, their regular security applies. Their regular security takes back over. So always set a running user, but it only controls the level of access from the dashboard itself. If they drill into a report, their regular security applies. One thing that you and your end users should know about dashboards is that they contain a lot of data, potentially, because I could have up to 20 components, pretty big component that lives or pretty big report that lives behind each component, and they can take a little while to load. So they don't show current data automatically when I click on them. You need to click the refresh button to view your current data. Much like with reports, you can also subscribe to dashboards. And when you do, it schedules a refresh and then sends you an emailed version. So it gets refreshed in Salesforce. You get the refreshed version in your email as well. When you create your dashboards, you get a decent amount of control over the size of the component. So the height, the width, I can drag and drop them, move them around, resize them if I need to see them a little bit better. And you can control a color palette as well. You also have the ability to update these components. So maybe I added a report chart and I want to go ahead and repurpose that report chart on my dashboard. I have the ability to do that. It's like saying, hey, you already created a report chart. Do you want to use that here as well? You have flexibility in how you add reports to the dashboard too. So I can do it from the dashboard with this blue plus component button, or I can do it from the report itself. Again, under that down arrow next to edit, I can choose to add it to a dashboard. This slide is important, and I promise we're almost done with dashboards, and we'll talk about the exam soon. You will want to know that different parts of your report feed different dashboard components. So we talked about a tabular format report. Tabular format can be displayed as a table, a lightning table. Otherwise, your summary and matrix format reports are going to feed your charts. And that is because this data that is displayed on the charts comes from the groupings and summarized data on your reports, which you get when you have summary and matrix format reports. So again, groupings and subtotals are going to feed your charts on your dashboards. The grand totals at the bottom of the report. Grand totals are what feed your gauge and metric components. Grand totals feed your gauge and metric components. And gauge is the one that looks like a gas gauge. Metric is just a single number and does allow for some conditional highlighting. Again, those come from the grand totals at the bottom of your report. Last slide on dashboards, back to our running user. So for reports, normally when someone runs a report, they see data that they would otherwise see. In the context of a report subscription, we do set that running user. Run the report as, from whose perspective are we viewing this data? On the right-hand side, what we're looking at is a dashboard. Dashboards always have a running user, and you have three options. It can be me, which is not the viewer of the dashboard. It is the creator of the dashboard, so you yourself. It can be another person, or it can be the dashboard viewer. And if I choose this third option, it becomes what we call a dynamic dashboard, which means everyone who views the dashboard views data as themselves. They view the data that they would normally have access to. If you have a dynamic dashboard, you can also check this box that says, let dashboard viewers choose whom they view the dashboard as. But this only applies to users with a profile permission called View My Team's Dashboard. And it only applies to people who are below them in the role hierarchy. So again, the view dashboard as, that's the running user of the dashboard. It only applies when a user is viewing the actual dashboard. Another way to think of the running user is if I'm the running user, it's as though I actually got up out of my chair, you sat down in my chair, and you're looking at my computer, seeing the data that I would normally see. That's what setting the running user means in the context of the email version of the report or the dashboard itself. Okay, great job, everyone. We've had a lot of content to cover. You're doing great. Just a few minutes left, a few things to wrap it up, and then we will be out of here. So lesson 6, conclusion and next steps. We already talked about many of these aspects of the exam, so just a quick review. The exam is all multiple choice or multi-select. 60 questions that are scored, 5 that are non-scored. You will not know which of the questions are the 5 non-scored. Do not worry about it. Do your best on all the questions. The exam, there might be some on-site testing locations. I think a lot of them, at least last time I checked near me, were not open right now. So most people have been doing it online. In a few minutes is when I will give you that coupon code. That will also be emailed to you within 3 to 5 business days after our webinar. But for those who are